All right. My name is Janet Forrest. I'm one of the adult program coordinators at the Nantucket Athenaeum. That's one of my hats. And then the other hat that I wear is I'm a certified life coach. So I do a number of different things. I help people with different problems, a lot around getting organized. I do some decluttering. I help people set goals. I help people stay focused and get organized. And of course, minimize their distractions, which is what we're going to be talking about tonight. And let me just pull up my PowerPoint. Let's see if this works. Everyone see that? Okay. So tonight, and I'll be able to send these slides to everyone. I have your email addresses from when you signed up. But go ahead and sit back and relax. You can take notes if you need to. And I'm happy to have people ask questions. So go ahead and interrupt. We're a pretty small group. I don't mind. And I'll pause and check in with everyone as I go along. So tonight we're going to be talking about creating and minimizing friction. I'll tell you what I mean by that in a moment. Also identifying emotional barriers and setting yourself up to focus. And I am going to give some practical tips towards the end, but what I've realized is a lot of people, they're not distracted for the reasons they think they're distracted. And a lot of people think, oh, if I just had the right tool or the right organizer or the right app, I'd be able to focus and I wouldn't be so distracted. And a lot of the times people are distracted by things they're not even aware of, which is what Janelle had brought up. And so I'm going to talk a lot about mindset, but I will give you some practical tools towards the end. And before we begin, I would just like to say that distractions are totally normal. And when I work with people, the first thing they say a lot of times is, you've never worked with anyone like me. I procrastinate and I'm distracted and I can't focus, and everyone runs into that. It's totally normal. And the other thing to keep in mind, it's been a heck of a year. So some people are used to going to work and they're working from home, or maybe they got laid off, or you have more family around than you're used to, or no family around. So our lives, it's different for everyone, but our lives really have been turned on their heads. And it makes sense that we're feeling even more distracted than maybe we normally would be. And the final thing I'll say is you can't always fix it. Sometimes we just have these distractions and they're not going to go away. So it could be coworkers, it could be neighbors, it could be things going on in your life, a health issue, but there could be things in your life that are distracting you, and it kind of is what it is for now. So we can talk about how to manage it or just be aware of it and work around it. So the first thing I want to start with is friction. And this came from a podcast I listened to. It's called The Hidden Brain by Shankar Vedantam. It comes out, it seems to come out in batches, but it's all about human behavior and why we do what we do. And this particular episode was Creature of Habit. And what they were talking about is, how do you develop habits? And people who are highly effective, it's not that they're more motivated than the average person, it's that they're better at setting up guardrails and systems so that they stay on track. And the way to do that is with friction. And what does friction do? It slows you down. It kind of holds you back. And there's going to be times where you want to use that or reduce it. So when you think about distractions, you want to create friction between you and your distractions. You want to make it harder to be tempted. So it might be as simple as unplugging your Wi-Fi for a couple hours when you're going to be working, or putting your phone in the other room, or shutting off the TV, or limiting your TV time. So anything that's a trigger for you, find a way to create space between you and that distraction. So for instance, I find myself getting really, really addicted to Instagram, and it kind of goes in waves. And something I've done before that's really helpful is I go in and I just rearrange all the apps on my phone. So when I open my phone and my thumb goes towards the place where Instagram is, it's not there. And I have to go looking for it. And the fact that I have to swipe and go looking for it is enough time to be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Do I really need to look at Instagram right now? So creating some space, some friction between these unconscious habits that distract us. So get creative with that. Really identify what it is that's distracting you, and how can you create just enough space between you and that unconscious action that stops you from doing it. And then there's going to be times where, that would be creating friction. There's going to be times where you want to reduce friction for tasks and goals. So I know the person that in this podcast, the example she used is that she likes to run in the morning, and she started just wearing her running clothes to bed. So when she got up, she didn't even have to put her running clothes on. She just had to put her sneakers on and go out the door. So as much as you can reduce the friction between you and what you want to accomplish can be really helpful. And that includes preparation and planning. So spending, if you have it, an hour or 2 hours and looking ahead during the week and saying, okay, these are the things I really want to get done. What can I do to just clear the deck and remove as many obstacles as possible so that I know I can do that? So it might be asking a partner for childcare. It might be getting everything you need ahead of time, making all those phone calls so that you know you have a ride to where you're going, or whatever it might be. The other place to reduce friction is thinking about your environment. And we're going to get into that when I talk about detractors, but just thinking about the space around you. What would make it a little bit easier for you to do what you want to do? So I've been trying to do a little bit more yoga. It hasn't been super effective, but I know that if I have my yoga mat there and I put it on my schedule, and I have a space that I know I can use, I just have to move the coffee table and I'm good to go, then I don't have to think about all that. It's less friction. And then the other thing to think about, the way to think about this, is removing the decisions. And I remember reading Mike Lewis, who wrote all those books on Blindside and The Big Short. He did a profile of Barack Obama, and on his first day, well, not on his first day of office, but before he became president, he went out and he got 4 blue suits. I think they were blue Navy suits. So he didn't ever want to have to think about what he was wearing in the morning. He's going to be making decisions all day, and decisions, whether they're big or they're small, they drain your energy. And so if you're constantly making these minor decisions, when it comes time to make a big decision or focus, you've used up a lot of your bandwidth. So it can be really important and helpful to minimize the decisions you have to make. So if you can go through your schedule or think about what you're trying to do, what can you just get out of the way and simplify so you're not thinking about? Oops, there we go. So thinking about that friction, when you want to increase it, when you want to decrease it, I'm going to go through different energy detractors of what might be getting in your way. And what I talked about at the beginning is sometimes we're distracted and we don't know why. And then we say, oh, I'm just lazy. Oh, I procrastinate. Oh, I just can't focus. Oh, I'm ADD or whatever. And I think what a lot of people miss is they're not identifying what it is distracting them. And when they can, it can be really life altering because you know what to target, you know what you're trying to fix. Okay, so there's 6 detractors. The first one is mental. This is how much brain power is available to you, how you process your thoughts, not what you're thinking about. And it's the ability to focus, think clearly, and make decisions and feel present. So detractors can be stress, multitasking, or doing challenging tasks. And the example I'd like to use, I checked with him. My boyfriend Andrew just got a new job, and it's a brand new job. So it's taking a lot of bandwidth. It's taking a lot of mental energy. So the other things he would normally do on top of work, he's trying to cut back on, because he goes in, he has a new desk, he has a new keyboard, he has new apps he's using, new applications. It's new coworkers. The whole space is new, and it's taking a lot more energy for his brain to process that. So when you're trying something new, whether it's a new instrument, or you're trying a new hobby, or you're in a new place, even driving around in a new location, you're hyper focused, you're not listening to the radio, just understand it's going to take more brain power, it's going to take more mental energy. So that can be a detractor. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it's important to acknowledge. The enhancers for mental energy can be having a clear plan. So understanding how you're going to get from point A to point B, focusing on the present task, trying not to do too many things at once, and minimizing distractions. So like I talked about, getting rid of that friction, allowing yourself to be able to focus on what's in front of you. The next detractor is emotional. So how your feelings impact your potential, and awareness and understanding of your emotions. I know there's kind of these big emotions, so anger, fear, and when you dig down behind those, what are the other emotions? Is it frustration? Is it sadness? There's all these other emotions that get buried by these big ones. So really having a sense of your emotional being, what are you feeling? An ability to control your emotions, and a freedom to express your emotions. And I'll say I was guilty when I was much younger. Is I showed up at work and I was like, work is a place to be professional and you leave your baggage at home. We're here to work, not to feel. And I understand now that we're human beings and we feel, and it's a part of who we are. And when you deny people their feelings, it can create a lot of toxicity. It can create a lot of conflict in the workplace, and everyone has a right to how they feel. And everyone needs a space where they can express that. So detractors for emotional energy is fear, suppressing your emotions, feeling unsafe or not allowed to express your emotions. And that's not just, at work, it could be in relationships, it could be in friendships, any space where you feel like you just can't be express your emotions. And enhancers can be as simple as just asking yourself, what do I feel, and acknowledging it. So even if you can't fix it, but just allowing yourself to feel it. So if you're feeling frustrated, and this can be a huge detractor and distraction, is if something's going on in your life, you're going to be thinking about it, you're going to be feeling about it. And even telling a friend or telling yourself and just allowing yourself to feel that for a little while and acknowledge it's there can release some of the power. Because I've seen people go, and I've been one of these people, you go through your life and you're like, I'm fine, everything's fine. It's not so bad, it could be worse, it's totally fine. And you can get away with it for a little while. But I think you'll find, and definitely the people around you will find, you're kind of cracking at the seams. So it's really important to find a place where you can express your emotions. Physical detractors. So this could be huge. Is your body up to the task at hand? Is your physical, are you physically your physical ability to take action on your goals? So if you're living with chronic pain, detractors could be lack of sleep, pain, malnutrition, illness. Right now I have a little bit of a headache, so I know that's a little bit of a distraction for me. If people have a chronic illness, back pain, all of those can distract from what you're trying to do, and being really kind to yourself can be helpful. Acknowledging that you're physically limited can be helpful. Enhancers can be exercise, healthy habits, adequate sleep, and nutrition. Environmental. So do your surroundings support your workplace, and are you creating a setting that's conducive to your present work or routine? So detractors could be noise, bad lighting, uncomfortable chair, ambiance. I know there's people, I like quiet when I work, but I know there's people that appreciate the white noise of a cafe, and they'll bring their laptop and get work done there. So understanding what environment you need and doing your best to create it. So enhancers can be finding a comfortable climate. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, adequate light, and quiet or white noise, whatever you prefer. And a great exercise, if people are feeling distracted, do an environment check, wellness check. So you might be tolerating more than you think. So check out your desk. When I started working from home, I had a lot of back pain, and I just had a hard time sitting still. And now, as you can see, I have a yoga ball I'm sitting on, and I got my laptop lifted, so my neck is looking straight ahead. I tend to slouch a lot, but I'm at right angles, so I can sit here more comfortably. And that was a game changer. It just made my life so much easier. So doing a check of, do you have what you need, and is your environment conducive for what you're trying to do? It sounds simple, but it can be effective. Okay, social. So these could be a distraction or a detractor. How do your relationships affect your routine, your ability to influence your relationships and be influenced by your relationships to reach your goals or potential? So detractors could be fighting with friends and toxic relationships, or at the other end of the spectrum, feeling lonely and feeling unsupported. And enhancers are surrounded by like-minded people and feeling a sense of community and supportive accountability. So do you have people in your life that can call you on things and hold you accountable, but in a way that you know they're concerned and it's coming from a place of caring? And I know this was a detractor for me when the pandemic happened. We live in a 1-bedroom studio apartment, and when we were both working from home, it was it was tight quarters. So this can be huge when you're in a relationship or your family's around, or having those, and now it's come full circle, but having those supportive relationships are huge to be able to get things done. And the final one, and I think more people than normal are experiencing this, is spiritual. And it can have to do with religion, but it's really about feeling a sense of purpose. Why do you get up in the morning? It's the ability to feel purpose in your life and your work and feel committed and connected to the present moment. So detractors can just be boredom or feeling lost. I see this in people that are empty nesters or people that have retired, so it's not necessarily a bad thing. They just went through a change, and now all of a sudden there's this kind of vacuum, and everything they had focused on is just not what they're focusing on now, and everyone needs a reason to get up in the morning. So it could just be boredom. It doesn't even have to be like a spiritual crisis. Enhancers are seeing your purpose, finding meaning in your life and work and routine. Where I see this for people is many people, they still have their house, they still have their job, they're doing fine, but those hobbies they used to do, they might have been part of a knitting circle, they might have played a recreational sport, they might have traveled, and losing those things that give so much meaning to your life can be really hard and really distracting. That's something for sure I've experienced over the winter, is just feeling kind of bored. I normally would have visited my family or my best friend or taken a trip, and I'm kind of just sitting here, and it's like I have a roof over my head, I have my job, like it's great, like it's fine, dogs are good, boyfriend's good, like we're good, but just feeling that sense of little bit of boredom. So those are the energy detractors. I'm going to pause for a moment. What questions do people have? Or comments? Am I going too fast?
No.
No? Okay. Okay. I'm going to move along, but jump in anytime. So the next thing I want to talk about, and I know this is a lot of mindset stuff, and I will get to tools, but I do think this is really important. So in addition to detractors that I think is like as a slow bleed, a slow drain on your energy, there's things that just completely block it. So I want to go through these ones, and they start, so there's 4. Limiting beliefs, interpretations, assumptions, and gremlins. I'll go through them one by one. So limiting beliefs are, they're kind of the surface level ones. So they're just kind of rules and beliefs we have about the world around us. And they're limiting in that they inhibit us from taking action or moving forward or reaching our potential. So a limiting belief might be like, oh, that club doesn't let people like me in. And it's like, well, do you know that? And it's just kind of this rule you made up. So the way you want to confront these, like it's not something really visceral. it's just sort of this belief you kind of have in the back of your head, and it's holding you back. So you want to think about, where did this belief come from? Did someone say something in passing that kind of planted the seed? Or did you read it somewhere? Or did you just kind of make it up? So think about where that belief came from and understand how it's holding you back. So if it weren't true, how would you act differently? If you didn't have this belief, what action would you take? So just start to question a little bit. If the opposite were true, what would you do? So on the next level down, you have interpretation. So interpretation is the story or narrative we create in response to an event, a situation, or experience. While it feels true for us, it may not be the truth. And the classic example of this is you call someone and they don't call you back. And an hour goes by and you're like, oh, well, maybe they're, and then 2 hours go by and you're like, well, are they okay? And then 3 hours go by, it's like, are they mad at me? And then a day goes by, it's like, what's wrong with them? This is so irresponsible. They should call me back. Are they mad? What happened? And then they call back and they're like, oh, my battery died and I lost my phone. So it's like these stories that just become like more and more vivid. And so a few questions to ask yourself is, what's another way to look at this? Or what if the opposite were true? And another thing you can do, especially if it's about something about yourself, or if it's feel like you're insecure and you're questioning yourself and you're feeling this interpretation, is ask, what would your best friend say about it? What would be their impression? Because lots of times when we think about what our best friend would say to us, it gets us thinking a little differently. And sometimes these stories are just, the Zen level is to just not judge it and be like, I don't know, and I'll find out when I can. That can be really hard. So if you're going to make up a story, make up one that serves you. It's going to make you feel better. I remember on the subway when I lived in New York, this guy was getting off and he bumped into me and said something really nasty. And it was terrible. And I was like, maybe he just lost his job. He probably just lost his job and he's having a bad day. I don't know what's happening to this guy. But if I'm going to make up a story, why don't I make up one that's just going to help me get through my day a little bit better? So those are interpretations. Once again, limiting beliefs are kind of surface level. And now we get into the good stuff. So we have assumptions. And assumptions are the belief that because something happened before, it must happen again. Or because something was true before, it must be true now. And the reason these are a little bit harder to work through is because you have evidence of whatever it is you believe to be true. So you've experienced it. And so say, okay, so I do acting. Say I audition for a play and I don't get a part. So I might say, I'm going to go in, audition, and I'm not going to get a part because the last time I auditioned, I didn't get a part. So what you want to do in that is really think back on the context of when it happened last time. So when did it happen before? What was it like? And then ask, what's different now about you or the situation? So maybe it's a brand new director. Maybe I've taken acting classes. Maybe I'm a lot more confident. What's different now from what happened before? And given your current circumstances, how true is this assumption now? So just doing a little bit of an assessment. And then the deepest, darkest energy block is Gremlin. So your Gremlin is your inner critic that has a customized, specially made, tailor-made message telling you why you're not good enough. And it's, so normally I would work on this. There's a whole exercise we could do, but we're in a group and I'm not going to. But Gremlins are tough to work through because it could be something that happened in your childhood. It could have happened through some kind of traumatizing event. It could be just something that's been part of you for so long you don't even know it's there. And the thing with Gremlins is they just kind of hang out in the background. And then when you try to do something hard or challenging, or you're going through a change, they come jumping out and they go, you can't do that. You're not good enough. And you go, oh yeah, I forgot. So it's really about understanding when your Gremlin is speaking to you, because what happens a lot of times is people will rationalize. They ignore the Gremlin and then they start rationalizing why they can't do something. It's like, well, it's really terrible timing. And you know, I could always do it next year and blah, 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 blah. But it's all rationalizing because your gremlin's going, no, don't do it. So the way you work through a gremlin, there's a couple of different ways. But the biggest one is just to notice it's there. Is when you're trying to do something hard and there's a piece of you saying, no, don't do this, you can't do it. Listen for that. Is there something in me telling me I'm not good enough? So start to notice when that's happening, and name it. And so the exercise you can do, I have mine right here. So this is one of my gremlins, and you want to work on one at a time. But this is one of my gremlins. It's a little Mrs. Peacock from the game of Clue. And what this gremlin used to say is, who do you think you are? You're not qualified for that. And so what you do is you put it nearby, and I start to hear that voice. Someone asked me like, oh, do you want to join this group, or do you want this job, or we're going to ask you to do this task? And my gremlin says, well, you know, are you qualified? Are you sure you can do that? You're probably not qualified. And now I have a gremlin where I look and I'm like, oh, it's my gremlin telling me I'm not qualified. And I go, shush. And now my gremlin tells me, do you know who she is? So it's really identifying that message and coming up with a new message. But the biggest part is just knowing it's there. And this sounds like big, deep stuff, but it gets buried underneath these small things that we call distractions. So it's really important to notice these. Yeah, so those are gremlins and interpretations, limiting beliefs, and assumptions. Does anyone have any questions or anything? Or want to share something? No? Quiet bunch. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to get into a couple practical things. So let's set you up for success. A few things to ask yourself just on a very practical level when you're feeling distracted is, what time of day are you most or least productive? I'm most productive in the morning. Once I get to 6 o'clock, the idea of doing something tedious, like I can do workshops, I can be around people, I'm a social person, but the idea of getting reading done or doing like an online class or like bookkeeping, forget about it, can't do it at night. So understanding what time of day you're best and then using that time, like making that super valuable. That's when you get that the tedious and the stuff that requires a lot of focus. Also understanding how long your attention span is. I'm good for about 45 minutes or a half hour. Some people can hyper focus, they can go for 2 hours. So understand how long you can focus, and it can be simple as just setting a timer on your phone. So you're gonna clean out a closet, or you're gonna work on your taxes, or you're gonna do your bookkeeping, or make a list, or plan a vacation, or whatever you're doing. Understand how long, you know, maybe you're good for 20 minutes or half hour. Set your timer, start working. When the timer's over, you get to stop and you can come back to it later. But just, or even just acknowledging when you reach that half hour mark, you're not going to be as productive as you are before. You're going to push through, and that's okay. But just be kind to yourself. Understand you're reaching the end of your attention span. And everything we talked about before, what are your internal blocks? So really getting honest with yourself when you're working on something and then you kind of find yourself getting distracted, getting in the habit of stopping yourself and say, okay, do I really need to do this other thing, or am I avoiding something, and what am I avoiding and why am I avoiding it? And it could be fear. It could be you don't know what's coming next. I mean, that can be huge for people, the unknown. It can be hard to get started. So for the library, we just decided, it's in the very early stages, but we're going to start a podcast. And I'm feeling super overwhelmed by this concept because I don't know what's next. Do I start interviewing? Do I start writing? Do I take a class on like the software? So that unknown can be really distracting because I don't know the steps. I don't know where to start yet. So I'm finding myself getting really distracted every time I sit down to do it. So understanding what's blocking you can help you move forward. And then only because someone commented on my Facebook thing when I said how to be not distracted, she said, make a list. And I said, it's a little more complicated than that. But anyway, so here's some tips. I'm not going to tell you how to make a to-do list. Everyone has their own method. Some people use their phone. I like using index cards, but there's no real wrong tool. But here's some things to keep in mind when you're making your to-do list. You really want to be specific and measurable. You want nothing on that list that's vague or abstract. So like, I'm trying to think what's on mine that was bad. So I was going to do something for the Rotary Club. Oh, we're going to do corporate memberships. So I put corporate memberships on there. And of course it didn't get done, because what does that mean? Like what, like make a list, call someone, have a meeting? Like, I don't know what that means. So I just skip over it. So when you put something on your to-do list, you want to know what it is. It doesn't have to make sense to anyone else, but it has to make sense to you when you write it down. So you want it to be a clear task. And lots of times you'll put something on there and it's really 4 things. So really, what is it you need to do? It should be measurable so you can get that whoosh when it's done. Prioritize and understand what needs to happen first. So maybe you have, you know, kind of like a running, I usually have like a running list, but then I have my list for the day that I put on my calendar. So understand what your priorities are, and schedule tasks, because this is the ultimate being honest with yourself. Because you have, I mean, I have 3 pages here and I know these aren't all getting done this week, but what I do is I prioritize them and I say, okay, I'm going to do this at this time, and I put it on my calendar. So really scheduling tasks is a great way to get them done, because you know when you're going to get them done. Or there's stuff that I've looked through and I look at my calendar. I have my clients, I have the library work, I have a couple of meetings I have to go to. It's like this oil change just isn't going to happen this week. So I'll keep it on my list, but I know I'm not going to kick myself that it didn't get done, because I know I can't get it done. Declutter your list. This is huge. Just because you put it on your list doesn't mean you have to do it. So go through your list and ask yourself, am I actually gonna do this? Like, can I delegate it to someone else? Can I just not do it? And then cross it off and move on with your life. I was pretty compulsive when I used to make lists, and I'm like, well, I put it on here, I have to do it. And sometimes just let it go, declutter your list. And as I've said several times, be honest. Are you really gonna do everything on the list? And when are you gonna do it? And is the task a task, or is it some abstract thing you've just put on there? So really break it down. And then for daily lists, so if you're getting up in the morning or the night before and you're like, okay, what am I gonna get done tomorrow? Shorten it. Whatever's there, shorten it. Because you can always do more. But it becomes a practice of creating a list you're actually going to get done, and putting 4 things on there and crossing them all off, instead of putting 8 things on there and crossing 2 off. So it can be really great for your mindset to feel that sense of accomplishment every day, even though it's less than what you like ideally would want. If you're honest with yourself, you're going to get to the end of the day and be like, wow, I did everything I said I was going to do. And this takes practice. It takes practice to figure out what's realistic. There's always things you can't factor in. So understanding you're going to put things on your list, but you need cushion. You need cushion on either side of everything you're doing. So there's driving time. There's, eating lunch. There's, walking the dog. There's all these things that you have to factor in that maybe aren't on your calendar, but are going to take away that time you thought you could use to be productive. And the last thing I want to bring up, especially because it's been a heck of a year, is consider getting the help you need, whatever that looks like. I'm someone who sees a therapist every other week, and I've been doing that for 5 years. And for me, it's been ongoing and it's been helpful. But if it's a particularly trying time, there's lots of apps. I haven't used them myself. Fairwinds is available. But notice if the distraction is more than just a distraction. It could be anxiety, it could be depression, it could be any number of things that are really, really holding you back. Or it could be reaching out to a life coach like me, or a friend, anyone you can confide in. But take good care of yourself and get the help you need, because it reaches a point where distractions become what's the word? Just really blocking you from moving forward, like actual walls from moving you forward. And you want to notice that. So take good care of yourself. And that's what I have. I know I tend to talk very quickly, so I'm happy to go back and go over anything. Does anyone have any thoughts or questions? And I'll remove the stop share so you can see my face.
You've given me a lot to think about. Thank you. I didn't realize, like limiting beliefs and some of the things that we put on ourselves or get in our own heads is what causes the distraction.
Mm-hmm.
I always think of having, it's more like pressure I put on myself to get things done. But it's interesting too. So that's given me pause and thinking about, next time I find myself in one of those situations to really think about what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that can be the value in getting honest with yourself about what you're going to get done, because everyone gets 24 hours. I don't care whether you're Oprah or nobody. Like you get 24 hours. That's all you get, and you can only get so much done. And I think when it's how you want to move through the day. So do you want to get 5 things done and feel really good about yourself, or do you want to get 5 things done and feel like you're a failure? So it's like you're still only getting 5 things done. So I think the more people can get honest and be kind to themselves and understand where they're at, because I think there's this idea of, if I could just be more productive, I'd get through the week and I'd be an oil machine and everything would just function the way it's supposed to function. And it's like, look, I mean, like I said before, in the last couple of years started getting migraines that just wiped me off my feet. Like, you get sick, you have a bad day, the dog runs away, your car breaks down, like stuff happens. So the idea that if we could just be more efficient and more structured and get the right tool, we'd have it all figured out. And that's kind of just not how it works. And the more you can prepare and think ahead and be kind to yourself and have that mental cushion, emotional cushion, that when things happen, you have the capacity to handle it. And it's not a crisis. I mean, I'm sure, and maybe someone in the room is this person, but I'm sure we all know this person, where just everything's an emergency. Like their whole life is an emergency. And it's exhausting just to watch, never mind be that person. So, yeah, just be nice to yourself. We're all just trying to get through our week.
So you talked about hyper-focusing, and I'm ADD, so I have a tremendous ability to hyper-focus, but I'll just start whatever I'm doing and just keep doing it, or going on to something else and not realize that I'm not actually doing the task that I started out to do, but I'm, but yeah, I mean, I think when I'm working, it's helpful. I do contracting work, so I pretty much have a focus, and that helps. But I think, working around the house or whatever, I can definitely focus on things that are not what I started to focus on, or are not really important at that time. And so I don't know, what would be strategies that would be helpful with that?
Yeah, something that comes to mind is timers. So whether it's your phone, so if you want to spend 45 minutes or an hour or something, just set a timer for yourself. It could be your phone, it could be the stove, so that at least you have something to kind of snap you out of it. And even if you pause and say, no, I want to keep doing this, but it's something to kind of break the focus, or kind of grab your attention, be like, over here, check back in. That kind of comes to mind is a timer.
Yeah, because I mean, I totally lose track of time. So one of the things I used to do is I had an app that chimed the hour, and it would actually say the time. It's 2:00,
Yeah.
So I would be like, wow, it's 2:00. I didn't even eat lunch yet. What's,
Yeah.
So that was, that's somewhat helpful, but the
Yeah.
timer would be even more directed.
Yeah. And knowing, having that clear plan of what you want to get done that day.
Mhm.
Because that will help with the timers. Like, I want to work on this for 2 hours because I want to move on to this after, or whatever it is. But yeah, I think timers can be huge.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you also talked about I work alone most of the time. So, and I'm usually like in somebody's house, they're not there. I'm totally pretty much on my own. I'm my own boss. I'm setting my own schedule. So I think the sort of loneliness factor comes up. I don't get bored.
Mhm.
So, and nothing is an emergency. So,
Yeah. Which
Uh,
which can be, great or a curse.
yeah.
Yeah. I remember when I was dog walking, and you'd think, oh, I'm just around dogs all day. It's amazing. I was so lonely, and I would see a human and I would talk a leg off a table. Like, I was just so
Mhm.
happy to see another human.
Yeah.
You get lonely. Yeah. Any other thoughts, Leslie? What are you thinking about?
Well, I think you gave some great ideas. I do like the time, although when you talk 2 hours, that's way more than I like.
Way more than I can.
I liked your 30-minute timer. I thought that was great. You did make me think about a lot of things that hopefully will. I put lots of things on a calendar on my phone, but not tasks. I
Mhm.
mean, this was on my calendar, but it's a specific. I wouldn't think of getting some small task, but it makes sense because then you can see it and act on it.
Mhm.
I like that.
Yeah, because it can easily, like, there's so many things on your task list that aren't real urgent,
Mhm.
that just get bumped and bumped and bumped until you find the time. You're like, well, when I have time, just like, when's that? So yeah, just putting it on there kind of creates some accountability.
Yeah, a lot of good things to think about. Thank you. Yeah.
Janelle, what about you?
Well, I think one of the challenges I have is when I don't want to do something, and I procrastinate it, or I put it off, and I'll say, I'll do something else instead. So I do like the idea of saying, you know what, just give yourself 30 minutes to start it. And this way you have an out in 30 minutes and you can move on and then revisit it another time. Or you might get into it, and I might get into a groove, because I do find myself sometimes when I really, I can then concentrate. So I like that idea, because I definitely have a project upstairs that I'm just walk by all the time and go, nope, don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, if I just set it and dive into it, and
Yeah.
planning too, because part of the problem is once I rip this apart, I don't know what to do with everything. It's an organizational project and a packing project. So
Right.
that's the other thing too, and so yeah. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I appreciate what was said tonight. It really does help. Like a aha moments there.
Yeah.
I have a question. I definitely get, you need to do stuff on your computer. You need to respond to emails. But of course, they're never the ones I set out to do, because they came before it. So you can't really put the computer away in the other room, because that's your task.
Right.
So how do you?
There are, if you wanted to get technical, there are apps and things you can download. I've never used them myself, but I know they exist, where you can shut off certain apps. So it would probably shut off Instagram and Facebook and You can even, it can be certain sites. So I worked with someone who, he was working from home and he found himself getting lost watching the news, looking at the news. And so he had something that shut off certain sites. So I think it was Facebook and the news. It could just sense which sites not to go to. So that's an option. And if it is emails, well, the timer too, set a 5-minute timer. That way, when the timer goes off and you're still scrolling through Facebook, you're like, oh, right, I was going to do something. Because I'll be honest, I do the same thing. Like, I'm not teaching this class because I'm like figured all this out. I'm teaching this class because I need it. So I think that having a timer that just snaps you out, because I do the same thing. You just kind of get sucked in. And having it written down and knowing why you're going in there. So not like, oh, I have my to-do list, like with all my things I'm going to do. And I'll just open my computer, say I'm opening my computer to send these 3 emails. The more you can be clear on what you're doing will be helpful. I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah, computers are tough.
Tough.
You know? Mhm.
One of the things I've heard on the emails is you know, you have how you're on a computer, you have it pops up and says you got this email, and you go to that, and the same thing on the phone. Things are always popping up, and you're like, oh, I need to look at that right now, but you probably don't. And so if the nature of your business or your life is not such that you need to respond to this email immediately, you check your email 3 times a day, instead of always being available.
Yeah, I've done that. I've shut off all my notifications. The only notifications, that I got on my phone is when I get a text or when it rings. And most times I have it on silent. My phone's almost always on silent. Actually, and I've recently started turning the volume back on because I found the silence was almost more of a distraction, because I'm like, maybe someone called, I should look at my phone. So I've actually stopped, I've turned the sound on because no one's really calling me that often. But if they call or text, I have that on. But email, I took Facebook off my phone. I don't even have it on my phone. Instagram, there's no other notifications. New York Times, nothing gets through my phone except for texts or phone calls. And yeah, I can tell you, like, having it on the other side of the room can even make a difference, because you have to get up and you have to walk over there. So, and the same thing with the computer. I don't have any notifications on my computer. Like, I don't know what's happening in my email. Yeah.
A program, an app that I've used is, it's called RoboKiller, and it basically all of my phone calls go to that, and it screens it for me. So, especially, a lot, I might be up on a ladder with ear hearing protectors and gloves on or something, and the phone rings, and, so, now, that a lot of those robocalls get done. And the other thing I just started doing recently is it's like, okay, if you don't recognize this person's name or the number, don't pick it up. Don't answer the phone. If it's somebody real who needs to get a hold of you, they'll leave a message.
Yeah.
But, because that breaks your rhythm.
Yeah.
The person who said, like, you don't have any reminders on your phone, like, I get really distracted. I need those, because I missed the beginning of this call because my cousin called, was all upset. And I could have said to her, call me back later. But I thought, okay, I'll talk to her for a little while. And then I get in to listen to her and I totally forgot. So now I missed half this meeting.
Well, you have to
But I
come
had
to
a
my class.
reminder for it. I thought it clicked on there and I said, oh, gee.
You have to come into my class on boundaries. Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, I mean, and that's why I tend not to, and I hope it's not a disappointment, I tend not to give a lot of tools and tricks and tips, because it really functions differently for everyone. Like I said, like, I went through my own transformation where I'm like, I need the noise because otherwise I look at the phone, whereas I can put it away and know nothing's happening unless I hear a noise. So yeah, it's different. It's different for everyone. Yeah. And I mean, I think a huge mistake people make is feeling like, well, if I just could focus, I could figure this out. Like I'm just distracted and I just have to try harder. And I just think that's a losing battle. Like, I think it's more asking a lot of why questions, like, why am I distracted? Why am I afraid to do this task? Why is it hard? And then a really great question is, what's one thing I can do? Like one thing I can do right now. Like Janelle, you talked about this big, complicated project. It's overwhelming. So, you know, what can I do this week? And one of my favorite quotes is by Martin Luther King. And he says, you don't have to see the whole staircase. You just have to take the first step. So just being willing to just take a step and trust that you'll figure out what comes next. But yeah, ask a lot of why question. Why am I distracted? Why don't I want to do this? And try stuff, because you'll figure out stuff that, you know, little things. It's a process. I don't think it's, you kind of build up your toolkit slowly. It's not you know, over the weekend get all set up and then everything works. So. Janet, I'm going to send, I can send you my slides. And
I would love that. Please. Thank you. I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll write that in the chat so I don't disrupt the whole thing, but
no worries.
That would be fabulous. So can I ask another question? I don't know if anybody else on the call thinks this, but I'm 62 and probably about, at least 5 years ago, I guess with COVID, everything's 2 years. So maybe it's like 7 years ago, I went to somebody and I said, could you please just test me for ADD? Now, it's not because I necessarily I'm not a big fan of drugs, but I can hyper focus on things. And anyway, the upshot was the guy said, made me answer all these questions. And she said, no, you're not. And then I have younger friends and they're like, oh my God, of course you are. Like, what a ridiculous question. And so I'm like, I would love to have some kind of tools to try to be better. I don't want to change who I am altogether, because that is part of it, but I would like to be able to get more accomplished and not forget things. I forget things all the time, even things that are really important. It's not just something for someone else or something little. I forget big things too sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 What's been successful for you in the past to remember things?
I don't know. I don't know that I've really tried very hard. I'll write a note to myself. Sometimes I'll put a rubber band on my wrist. But those are kind of silly things. I don't think I've made a serious effort, a really, really serious effort. Maybe I try to do too many things because I'm interested in many things and I like to do, maybe I just do too many things.
Mm-hmm. Leslie, you have something to say?
So probably as the grand dame here, I could say something. I know perhaps when I was your age, I guess I took things for granted that I just could multitask and do all these things and could remember them and juggle them and blah, 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 blah. And then, you forgot the this or you forgot the that. So I do find that I don't forget as much as I used to because I'm more programmed that it's so easy to forget things that I will put it in my calendar. I'll set an alert on the calendar that could even show up the night before, or day before, and they even let you do 2 alerts. And so maybe I think for this I had it an hour before because it's like when whoever Ayers said, oh my God, it's 2:00. I just plow through something and don't realize that I'll tell you another trick I have. I set an alarm for 10 minutes before, like I've done so much Zoom, because you can be on the phone and all of a sudden it's 15 minutes past the time you expected. So I guess alarms.
Yeah.
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 They do work. I mean, because I do that for myself, but sometimes I don't look at them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
One tool that has changed my life is Google Calendar. And I like that I love that it's on my phone and my computer in the cloud. So if there was a fire and I lose my phone and my laptop, or they fall off the ferry or whatever, my calendar is still there. I just need to be able to log into my Google account, and you can share invites. So if I have an appointment with someone, I can just share the invite with them and it's on the calendar. I like that I can paste stuff in there. So if I have if I have a Zoom meeting coming up, I'll paste that Zoom link into the calendar event. So I see it on my calendar. I'm like, oh, I have to do this thing. And then the link is right there. So Google.
I have to learn how to do that better because it doesn't work for me a lot of times.
But
Because once you put it in there, you can't change it. Or that's my experience.
Oh, no, you should be able to change it, but it's but that tool has been helpful. And also, how often do you look ahead to your schedule?
Well, you should probably do it first thing in the morning and last thing before you go to bed.
Yeah, that can be really helpful, is like one day at a time, not so much worrying about the week. I mean, you want to worry about that, but even before you go to bed or first thing in the morning, give yourself, I mean, you could probably do it in 5 or 10 minutes and say, all right, what do I have today? Is there anything I need to cancel or move around or add? And even that could be a good time to set alarms. I mean, on my phone, I could set 20 alarms if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I know people do that for even like meds or vitamins or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So in the morning, just set all your alarms. It's like, I need an alarm at 11:45. I need one at 1. I need one at, and try it. Like, I mean, like I said, there's no silver bullet, but try that for 4 days and see what happens.
It's a good idea.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you give yourself an incentive to get a project started? There are certain things that don't have to get done. They don't have a deadline, and consequently, they don't get done even though you need to get it done.
Right.
For example, let's say setting up, medical alerts. That's so important, and most people don't do it until it's too late, and most people don't want to do it. So
yeah, I'm just trying to.
That's very hard for
Let me
me.
see if I can get. I had something on procrastinating. Let me see if I can pull it up. Let's see, it's here. All right, I'm going to go through this and see if it helps with this. And I get where you're saying, like, why is it important? How do you motivate yourself? Because, kind of intellectually it's important, but how do you viscerally feel that, like, I'm going to get this done? So this is kind of a 5 steps of when you're feeling you're procrastinating. So step 1 is embrace your humanity. Everyone procrastinates. The people that are highly functioning, and I'll send this in with the email, but Elon Musk, Oprah, they all procrastinate. They just have life coaches and assistants and people that keep them on track. So everyone procrastinates. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not crazy. And it can be helpful to acknowledge if you're doing something really difficult. So Janelle, you talked about this big, complicated project, acknowledging that you're facing a challenge. Like, this is really hard. So it makes sense that I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. So just embrace your humanity. Do a reality check. So Grace, this might be helpful. Understand the scope of the project, because lots of times, I talked about this before, the unknown's really scary. So when you can't see what's coming down or what it looks like, you just turn it into the monster under the bed. So really sit down and be like, how long is this going to take? What does it entail? Don't even take an action, but who do I have to call? If it's a medical thing you talked about, like, okay, I have to call and make an appointment. Maybe I have to call my insurance company. Just make a list. And you might be like, oh, I could do all these calls in 20 minutes. But just get a sense of what needs to get done, because then maybe it's not so scary. And you have a realistic view of what needs to happen. And then talk about motivation. Consider quitting. Like, you're like, I'm not going to do it. And you might say, no, I'll have a heart attack if I don't take care of my health. Like, I'm going to do it. So just consider giving up. Or you might say, you know what, this really isn't that important to me. I had someone that came and they wanted to do a couch to 5K. And they're like, I want to run. And after a couple of weeks, I'm like, I'll be honest, I'm happy to work with you on this. I don't think you like running. It's like, pick something else, go to cycling or something. So, so consider quitting. And then if you decide to stick with it, you'll be that much more motivated to stick with it. Lower your expectations. So what's a fail-proof amount you can get done? What's some small baby step? So if it's a medical thing and you have to call your insurance and doctor, whatever, just call the doctor. Commit to making one phone call for this, because lots of times what happens is you can ask that person a question and they'll say, oh, I'll take care of all that for you. You don't have to do anything else. That's very lucky, and it might not happen. But just
Usually doesn't.
It usually doesn't, right? But commit to doing that first step, because sometimes when you get that first step done, first of all, you get a little more clarity. You know what the next step is, and you can just feel good about starting. At least you started. And sometimes for a lot of people, just starting can be a game changer. So just like take a baby step, and then once you're started, create a stick. So there's a saying of a carrot and a stick. So the carrot moves you forward and the stick keeps you on, pushes you forward. So this is the other half of the motivation. What's the cost of not getting it done? My health might go down the drain. Like, my family will have to take care of me. I might go broke. I'll lose my house. Like, what are the costs of not getting this done? And who can hold you accountable to that? So it just has to, it doesn't have to be real to anyone else, but it should be real to you. This is a less serious example, but a couple of years ago, I wrote a book, or I was planning to write a book. I was almost done, and I was going to self-publish it. And I was close enough that I really want to get it done, and I needed something that would hold me accountable. So I created a GoFundMe page to help fund the publishing. And I knew it would be my mom, but I knew someone would buy a book. They would buy one book. And if I didn't do this, I'd have to give that money back. And that would have been unacceptable to me. So I was like, I'm going to start this GoFundMe. At least 3 or 4 people will invest. Many more people did, which was great. But it was enough that I'm like, okay, like, people are waiting for this book. I have to finish it. To me, that's real. So find something that is real for you that will hold you accountable and push you forward.
Thank you.
Yeah. Was that helpful?
Yes, it's because when there's no deadline, there's no incentive for me to do anything. And what you gave as an example was something with a deadline that was real to you. And once that was done, it really would get me in, the incentive to get things done myself.
Yeah. And I can't recommend, even though I'm still pretty bad at this, ask for help. Like, call a best friend, call someone who knows. Like, if it's a medical thing, if you have a friend that's a nurse, call and say, hey, I have this problem. I just don't know what to do. They're going to be like, call this person, this person, this person. So ask for help. People want to help. They do. Any other thoughts, comments? I will take a moment to plug, next week, I'm doing another workshop on decluttering, on how to declutter for yourself. And then if you have a loved one that you're trying to help, we can talk a little bit about that too. So that'll be next week. Lucy,
Awesome.
you hadn't said anything. Do you have any thoughts, Lucy?
No, this was a great class. Thank you, Janet. Really good. And the things that I took away from it was being specific and, breaking down what you really want to do. Because I say like, oh, I want to do this, but that could be days of work. So just getting little things done. Yeah. No, really good. And I look forward to the slides to share them. I know some people can use them too.
Good. All right. Yeah, and this is recorded, so I'll send everyone the recording that you can listen back to. So.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for being here, everyone. Have a wonderful night.
Yeah.
You too.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Janet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.